It's Heritage Month, and this week we're asking, is life better somewhere over the rainbow, far away from South Africa? From Nelson Mandela, South Africa, to finding the Mandela in ourselves or other heroes to believe in for a better South Africa. Is Mandela, South Africa, still a nation to be proud of, or are South Africans more disillusioned and disappointed than ever and looking for greener pastures? And why do those who say, I'm staying, believe there is something to stay for? Hi, everyone. It is Heritage Month, as we know. So this week, we're talking about Somewhere Over the Rainbow. You know that story? You know that song? Well, we're asking our esteemed guest today if Nelson Mandela, South Africa, was merely a pipe dream, and whether it's time for us to find the Mandela in ourselves and possibly look for other heroes to believe in for tomorrow's essay, for an essay we believe can be better. Is Mandela, South Africa, still a nation to be proud of? Or are South Africans more disillusioned and disappointed than ever? And are they looking for greener pastures? Are they looking to leave and look for opportunities elsewhere? We're looking at emigration versus I'm staying. And for those who choose to stay, why do they still believe in South Africa? And we've got two wonderful guests, two top achievers, high achievers. We're going to give you a little bit of background to the two of them. So I'm going to introduce them very simply as Stavros Nicolaou. Did I say that right? Stavros Nicolaou. Is that how your granny says it?
Yeah?
Of Greek origin. I could be. People have asked me if I'm Greek, actually, just FYI. Aspen Executive Director and called South Africa's Mr. Impact. And then we've got Pearl Pillay from the National Youth Development Agency and also Managing Director of the Youth Lab, which is just like one of her jobs. Welcome to the two of you.
Thanks very much for having us.
And like I say, we're going to be talking about your very much I'm staying, Stavros, we know that. Pearl, I want to hear from you as the youth, how they're feeling. Let's start with Mr. Impact. Now, we know that you are a big cheese at Aspen, right? We don't have to talk a lot about that. Your list of achievements would take up all the time of this podcast if we had to do this. So I'm just to mention a few to demonstrate why we call you Mr. Impact, okay? Chairman of the Public Health Enhancement Fund, 3 terms on the board of Brand South Africa. I have to read this because it's so much. Elected to the NEDLAC 5-a-side on the National Health Insurance, that's NHI. Being on the export panel on devising an export strategy for South Africa. Serving on the BRICS Business Council now for a second term, I believe. Yeah, for a second term. And the list is never ending. But my favorite, Stavros, is that you were awarded the Order of the Lion of St. Mark by the Greek Orthodox Pope and Patriarch Theodoros II. Have I said that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Does that mean that I should be peeling grapes and feeding you, and Pearl should have been maybe fanning you with some olive leaves or something?
Not at all. It doesn't come with any hotline above.
Nothing.
So
you can't send me to Greece for free.
No preference calls up beyond the clouds, right?
But there have been a few other awards, and I'm going to let you show off. You tell us, please.
Yeah, I don't know that it's worth discussing awards.
No, it is worth. I want to know.
There's always a team of people, and there are many people you collaborate with. But what I try and do in my life is I've got a philosophy that you're on this planet for a finite time. You don't know, it could be 50, 60, 70
Absolutely.
years. And you've got to make an impact and change the world as best as you can, or change your society, your community, your street, your district, whatever it might be, whatever your talents allow you to do. I don't think you've lived unless you've given it your best shot to try and make an impact. And an impact for me is, have you changed the lives of others around you? It's a very simple philosophy. That's how I live every day of my life. I'm very fortunate because I work in the healthcare/pharmaceutical industry.
Is that your passion?
And that is what we do. So at Aspen, every morning, all of us get up and we say, how many more lives am I going to save today? How many more lives am I going to improve? And how many better healthcare outcomes am I going to achieve? And that's what drives me every morning. So I wake up, so it's easy to get out of bed for me, no matter how few hours of sleep I've had, because I want to go with a team of people, have an impact. And I think healthcare is very understated, to be frank with you, because we saw so many people woke up during COVID and realized, oh my word, there's a world called healthcare and there's a world called pharmaceuticals, because we're so focused on just the economy and on the different economy and on some of the social aspects. So it was a big wake-up call for the world, and it was great in a sense for me because I think it brought into sharp focus the significant health inequalities and how much more we have to do. We saw that firsthand. So that's a further driver. Every morning wake up, we've got to bridge this inequality gap. I mean, the COVID pandemic was catastrophic for Africa. Lives and livelihoods that could have been saved were lost, and we can never, ever allow that to happen again. So that's what motivates me.
That motivates you, and then you still have to tell me about what are those other awards that earned you. Other awards, your passion.
I don't know, those awards
you don't
are
want to show off. You can show. I'm giving you the platform to show off. Come tell me.
I think awards are really symbolic, but I mean, I was very fortunate. Unfortunately, I couldn't go because this was during the BRICS summit. But the president of Cyprus, I happen to be of Cypriot origin. I'm very much a South African, but my ancestral heritage is.
But you're South African born,
Cypriot.
Yes? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I got awarded an order by the president of Cyprus, and then later on this year, 1st of November, I hope to make it this time around. I will receive the Argo Humanitarian and Public Service Award from the President of Greece.
When's that happening?
1st of November this year.
Can I come with you because my birthday's on the 9th?
You
and
can,
I always wanted to go to Greece.
You can go in my place. How's that?
Can I go get the award for you?
You can.
I could pass for Greek a little bit, right?
You definitely
okay, I'll
can.
say I'm happy to do
You
it.
definitely can.
Let me just make that date.
We'll
what is the date again?
1st of November.
Perfect, I'm free.
And
I see that.
We'll give you.
It's right. I don't need to pay.
We'll give you a crash course in Greek mythology. How's that?
Okay.
And we'll look at all the high impact characters in Greek mythology, the Socrates, the Platos, etc. But I think on a more serious note, though, it's honestly not about awards.
Absolutely.
I mean, awards are just symbolic gestures. The best award you can get is when you change a person's life.
I agree completely.
Or you change a community's life.
Absolutely.
Or you roll out HIV, ARV drugs to communities that couldn't access them, and you raise the life expectancy by 10 or 11 years. That's changing the world because it means you've got less orphans around, less children that are going to struggle and not get educated and land up on the streets. Those are the best awards, is when you get a phone call, a message, a WhatsApp.
I agree.
So for me, awards are like really somewhere in the background. The real award is I very often get these messages on the phone. I say, thank you, Aspen. You changed my life. I couldn't get educated, couldn't get a job, and I've just landed a dream job. That's what really
that's wonderful. And it's so great to hear. And you've answered all my other questions, so you can go. But it's, you know what, as much as you say that, and it's very humbling to hear that you say that is the passion and we don't do it for the awards, but it's great that you get it. It's great that somebody's recognizing you for it and take it and embrace it. And yes, we'll still go to Greece in November, or I'll go for you in November. Pearl, we had to go with age before beauty, but I mean, this age is all the
story of my life.
It's all the olive oil that keeps him looking this young. So I'm not going to tell you how old Stavros is. But Pearl Pillay, your accolades are also too many to mention. You've been an activist in the youth development space, worked with organizations like Amnesty International. I'm very jealous. You are the recipient of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, lauded as one of the country's top young South Africans, and the list goes on as well. But who is Pearl Pillay, and what has made her so passionate about young South Africans and what they want and what they need?
Apart from needing a job?
Well, apart from needing a job, yes, of course. You could have done any other job, I'm sure. You could have picked anything. You're a smart girl.
I actually fell into youth development by accident. I got expelled from Wits University.
That's inspiring.
Great. It was a great time in my life. My parents were very proud.
I'm sure.
And was in the room with people who had run Youth Lab, my company at the time. And they were like, well, sounds like you need a job. And I did. I actually wanted to get into work around like basic education. So completely stumbled into youth development by accident. And then got in and actually kind of just found my space. I think it's, number one, very nice working with my age mates. So just
Your age mates.
my
as in
age
people
mates,
your own age, like not me and Stavros.
it's fine.
is
I'm
what
bringing
you're
down the
saying.
age average in this panel. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's been so fun to wake up for the last 10 years and go around this country and this continent and speak to young people about our lives and politics.
You've worked in various countries, yeah?
I have. I've been
Yes.
very lucky to do that in my job. And it's so rewarding. It's interesting. It's fun. I've never had a day, I've been in youth development now for 10 years. I've never had a day that I've woken up and felt tired to go to work because
That's amazing.
my work is just talking to other people like me about the communities that we live in and how to make it better.
And you get paid for that.
I found a way to scam people into paying me just to talk, which, I don't know how I did it, and I would not be able to write a book about it, but, somehow it all worked out.
Yeah.
And I think now being able to kind of have the opportunity to do that kind of work that I've been doing in civil society at scale now with government, you kind of just really see the cogs of how society functions. And I think for me, it's a really interesting space to be in. You learn so much about people, you learn so much about how the world works, and you get to really find ways to have your own ideas live and breathe.
Yeah. So, I mean, people don't understand when we talk about, national youth development. Just give us a very layman's, as if like I'm the dummy in the room. What are we talking about when we're talking about that? What is the actual job?
In a nutshell, solving the country's problems.
Well.
I'm surprised that I don't have a head full of greys at this point. Youth development basically is addressing issues that young people face. And broadly, for me, all issues are youth issues, right? In South Africa, we're lucky that
because we're looking ahead, yes.
And we have such a young population, right? The majority of our country is young. And so all problems that affect young people affect the country at large. And so whether it's housing, whether it's the big one, unemployment, whether it's drugs and substance abuse or teenage pregnancy or education, our work is to find solutions. And we do that, at least in my role, by centering young people, by having young people work as collaborators and co-creators in the solutions that we create for South Africa.
Opportunities.
Yeah, well, finding the opportunities and
Finding the
supporting. For me, I think a lot of my work is not about creating opportunities. It's about finding people who are already doing the work and supporting them. They're the ones that create opportunities. It's not government. It's not the private sector.
Yeah.
Our job is to resource people because people in communities are already doing the work. They already have ideas. They already know what their communities need. They just lack resources and they lack adequate support. And so our role is really just to provide that support function so that people can do what they're doing already.
Okay, so Pearl meets Stavros. He's a big cheese at Aspen.
Yeah,
so you're talking about money
if you need to
and
have a coffee
funding.
next week, we'll align our schedules. There's some conversations we need to have.
So meet each other. So
Great
I'm
pleasure
putting
to
you on
meet
the spot here. Sorry, Stavros. So
No problem at
my
all.
question to both of you, and we'll come back to you, Stavros, is how do you feel about South Africa right now in 2023 as we sit here today?
I think two things immediately spring to mind. The first is can I call it a resilient disappointment? And I'll explain what that means.
That's interesting. We can
It's a
coin
real
that.
contradiction in terms, but I also think filled with opportunity and prospect, provided we do the right things. So that, if I had to summarize it, that's it. Now, let me explain what I mean by resilience. I was recently asked, out of 5, where do you rate South Africa right now? And I said a high 2. Okay. Right. But also a resilient 2. Because despite the many headwinds we confront as a country, and there are many headwinds, you can go through them.
Yeah.
They're well rehearsed, well recorded. South Africans, when they have their backs to the wall, somehow have the opportunity to pull that inner strength together and to come out fighting and to turn the situation around. And I've seen it so many times, and I think it's great that we're conducting this interview today on the eve of the World Cup.
Yeah.
And just getting to work this morning, is driving around. It's wonderful to see all the people wearing their Springbok jerseys.
Yeah, or the yellows and greens.
Correct. And it kind of reignites that enthusiasm of 1995 and 2007, and also 4 years ago, 2017, when arguably the most multicultural and most talented Springbok rugby team led by Sia Kolisi ran onto the field and proved all the pundits wrong. So no one gave us a chance in 2017 in England of winning the World Cup, and we did. And that, for me, epitomizes, it embraces. Sorry, I'm getting the dates wrong. It's 2019. Apologies.
2019.
2019.
Yes. I was trying to
not
think about that. My memory is very bad.
So it was 2019, and that embraces the spirit of South Africans. So when I say we are resilient disappointment, we are disappointing at the moment because we're not addressing the most fundamental challenges in society. And we can do those just by taking certain decisions, very difficult and complex decisions, but they need to be taken nonetheless. Okay, but what gives me a lot of hope is we are a resilient nation. And we have a resilient private sector. And what I'm particularly pleased about is around 3 months ago, a private sector organized business, to be more specific, entered into an arrangement with the president and his cabinet. It's a partnership. It's through a forum or a conduit called Business for South Africa, which is an execution arm of Business Unity South Africa, and colleagues from the Black Business Council, where the private sector in 3 critical areas of the economy are going to make capacity, capability, expertise, and skills available to fill that void of capability and capacity. You know, we talk about not having a capable state, and it's true because our institutions have been hollowed out. So in 3 areas, energy security, infrastructure and logistics, crime and corruption, in those 3 areas, the private sector on a pro bono basis, under the right governance structure, because this has to be at an arm's length, right? And it's got to follow, it's got to be government-led, and it is going to be government-led, but it'll be under the ambit of a right governance structure. And those are the things that give me hope to get us beyond the 2, closer to the 4, because that's where you want to land up at the end of the day.
So you're feeling hopeful for South Africa, about South Africa right now as we sit here. You're hopeful. There's a lot of work to be done, but you truly believe that work will get done, and you are hopeful.
Yeah, so I'm not minimizing the challenges.
Of course.
They're well known, and they're daunting, and they're overwhelming at times. However, the only way that we've demonstrated in the past, look at what happened with the pandemic. Private and public sector work together seamlessly like never before. There's a solidarity fund set up. I just look at my own company, Aspen. We were able to get into double quick time production of vaccines. We produced 230 million Johnson & Johnson vaccines for and on behalf of Johnson & Johnson, and that saved the day. So imagine if we get in these 3 areas the full tilt of private and public sector working together, one common vision, one common conviction. We can pull it off.
Look, we also had a bit of a dark side that came out of who was working, and, you know, the scandals that came out of that and the corruption. But like you say, there are positive stories. Do you believe there are more positive than negatives?
Definitely. And I think where we collaborated, there were no dark corners or dark forces, right, which is really positive. Look at the Solidarity Fund, raised 4 billion rand. Now, why was the fund set up in the first place? It was set up to give flexibility and agility to respond to an emergency when government would take through its procurement processes and the like would take forever. So the Solidarity Fund was unique globally. You know, working at Aspen's great because we have a presence in over 50 markets. So I could gauge at any time during the pandemic what were the other 49 markets doing. And our response was rather unique in this country. And you can see just how well and internationally we are acclaimed for the way we handled the pandemic at the time. So let's use that as a blueprint to move forward. And that's what gives me hope every morning.
And Pearl, sitting there now, how do you feel about the South Africa that we're in now in 2023?
You know, quite bleak. I think in my job every day, we get to go out into communities and see what South Africa means daily, right? And I think we have a tendency in this country of looking at milestones and the big happy moments and categorize that as the South African experience, right? And I think the Boks are a really good example because the Boks are lauded, for winning the World Cup and being this big uniting factor. But what happens when the Boks lose, right? The narrative when the Boks lose is also South Africa, right? It's, oh, look, these quota players, right? Siya Kolisi is not Siya Kolisi when the Boks lose. And I think we are often very dishonest about how we look at things like hope in South Africa, right? Because
In what way?
I think for the everyday South African, right? And if you just think about a young person in South Africa, if you get the opportunity to go to a school that's resourced, you're already lucky, right? To finish school, the number of people that start grade 1 and finish matric is vastly different, right? When you get to matric, the number of people who can read for meaning versus those who can't, very big difference. Then the number of people who get the opportunity to go to university and get a job, or just finish university and then get a job, right? That's South Africa. And I think when you look at young people specifically and the levels of hopelessness, the lack of opportunity, the lack of anything to kind of hold on to say, okay, this is the thing that's going to keep us going. There is no plan for young people, right? And I think we are an incredibly resilient nation, and I think it's a thing that separates South Africa from the world by far, is our ability to find humor in everything, right?
Yeah.
In the midst of load shedding, in the midst of the
And
pandemic.
like Stavros said, we are resilient.
Yeah, in the
Or
midst of the
resilient,
pandemic,
yeah.
we got some of the best jokes on the internet, right? We're able to find good in everything. I think the experience of young people is that we're very tired of having to find the good in everything. It would be nice to just
to
have
look
the
for
good.
it.
Yeah, and it would be nice to not have to be resilient and not have to.
So there's somewhere over the rainbow, there's no pot of gold in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
Are they not
pot of
seeing
gold's
it?
been gone for a really long time, right? Or there's always been a pot of gold. It's just been in the hands of very few, and
Yeah.
we don't all get to benefit from this wonderful idea that South Africa is. And so I think my outlook is a little bit of both, right? Because I think part of doing the work that I do means being very in touch with reality, and the reality is very sad. But you still have to keep working, right? And so I think we have so much space for opportunity. We have such bright minds in this country. We have young people that have incredible hope,
Yeah.
that have incredible minds, right? And are so skilled and innovative at finding solutions out of nothing. And so that's what means that you have to kind of keep going, and you can't sit back and say, well, everything's terrible and let's, know. And I mean, if you just look right now with elections coming up next year, the way the push to register to vote across the board, even the private sector for the first time is talking about elections, right? I think it's an opportunity for us to say there is something here that's worth saving. There is something that's worth all of the work.
Great.
But you have to kind of balance that with knowing that in the now, things are not actually that great.
And do you find that young people who have those great ideas that you're talking about are finding it very difficult to find the opportunities, or it's their bureaucracy, it's the red tape that prevents them from taking? Do they feel, are those their experiences preventing them from actually turning those into a reality?
Yeah, and I mean,
it's so hard.
It's the inequality, right, that we were talking about now, where if you have a great idea, but you're from a rural or township community, you first have to figure out how to get yourself out of that situation before ideas can even matter, right? Ideas are for the privileged. And so we don't get that opportunity to sharpen young minds that don't have access to spaces where ideas get to be sharpened. And I think it's why things like the NYDA and civil society are so important, because that's where young people from a regular community and a regular high school...
Ordinary people.
Yeah, ordinary people who don't have access actually get to have their ideas matter and mean something. And I think, we talk about the relationship between the private sector and the government, and I think we sometimes forget the relationship that civil society should also have, right? And the way we need to resource and empower civil society, because that's where communities find expression. So unfortunately, there aren't a lot of platforms for regular young people to have their ideas flourish, but there are lots of people doing that work.
But meet Mr. Impact again.
Yeah, no, we're having coffee next week.
You definitely.
Before the
Meet
Greece
Mr.
trip,
Impact.
we're having coffee.
I'm sure with your two great minds and what I'm hearing here, the two of you could make magic. I'm telling you that you can. So the sentiment out there is that young South Africans have absolutely no regard for Mandela's South Africa. They don't see him as a hero that the elders do, that's of older generations, that they still celebrate him. The older generation celebrates Mandela, and the young ones feel kind of let down and going, you had this dream, but like, what was the point? What did you do to make that happen? And Stavros, I know you're of that more mature generation. I'd like your thoughts on that, because that is the word on the street. That's what we're getting. That's what we're feeling out there. Your thoughts on that?
Look, I'm not surprised young people are feeling that way because they don't really know Mandela or they don't know that era. But I think what we do need to reflect on is that our country, and I'm a product of the 70s and the 80s. And as difficult as it is to conceive, our country was a lot more cataclysmic and facing a state of catastrophe than it is today. As hard as it is for young people, so I've got two young kids. I've got a 22 and a 21-year-old. So I kind of hear this from them all the time.
You've got two grown-ups.
Correct, yeah, correct. But I've been hearing this since they were teenagers, right? So it is difficult given the state of affairs of the country at the moment. And it's not about did Mandela land us in this position, because no single individual can do that, right? It's not like Mandela sat there and took all the decisions. He didn't. I think what is worth embracing, though, is the principles and the values that Mandela stood for. And he stood for a non-racist, non-sexist, united nation where you can attempt to give people a better life. Because we know the vastness of the inequality in this country is amongst the worst in the world. We know that. We've got one of the worst Gini coefficients. And, you can go through all those sort of empirical measures. But it's what do people on the street feel at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's got very little to do with Mandela, quite frankly.
Yeah.
What we ought to do is we need to modernize some of the values and principles that Mandela stood for.
Yeah.
And we've got to align to what I said earlier, because one of the biggest disappointments right now is that we lack social cohesion in the country. So the social cohesion project, which really took off and it's ebbed and flowed. And, in 95 there was an ebb because Mandela and the Rugby World Cup united the nations. You go through these ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
So we need to find a consistent ebb and flow here, not this roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So I believe the social cohesion project and getting a socially cohesive society is one of the most important things we can do, because you can have the best laid economic plans. If you don't have a socially cohesive society and everyone feeling part of that society, you will never be able to deliver or execute on that plan, and people will continue to feel alienated, insularized, and above all, disappointed. So it's not really about Mandela. It's about lifting out Mandela's values and principles, modernizing them, and rebuilding the social cohesion project in the country. That's what we ought to be doing.
And Pearl, your thoughts? I mean, you're in touch with young South Africans. Is it true? Is that how they feel? They don't see Mandela as a hero, that they don't get what Stavros has just said, what stood for, that they're looking for other heroes. They're looking for other people to, and I just want to hear from you honestly what young people are telling you about that.
Yeah, I mean, 1994 was 30 years ago, right? So most young people today have no memory of 94 and that whole time. I was born in 1991, right? So when everyone was out here voting, I was learning how to walk. Like, it's not, we don't have, it's not in our
Stavros
collective.
and I were in different places.
You guys were voting.
We were standing in the queue, yeah.
But we don't have it in our collective memory, right? And I think even the way we teach history, the way we talk about apartheid, the way we talk about the liberation movement is very divorced, I think, from what people actually experienced. And that's transmitted onto young people, right? So the attitudes that young people have towards not just Mandela, but that entire movement, right, is a lot more dismissive, I think, than it should be. But again, I don't think we're having conversations in honest ways. I don't think we're bringing through history as history, right? We are holding on to memory as if that's going to be the thing that's going to build South Africa.
Yeah.
And so people are disillusioned with that, right? No one wants to hear about Mandela when people are sitting at home with degrees and no jobs, right? Because Mandela's not helping them do that.
Yeah.
And the South Africa that Mandela lived in and the South Africa right now are vastly different, right? I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how, in the 70s and the 80s, South Africa was a catastrophically different place. But that also was not a democratic society, and this is. And so even the fact that we can sit and make comparisons with how life was under apartheid, but we're doing that from a point of freedom, points to this idea that you can't hold on to your liberation heroes because people don't feel very, very liberated. And whether that's true or not, right? Because I think we also underestimate what freedom means, right? And as young people, we don't have
really
a sense.
know what freedom means.
Yeah, I think as young people, especially, we don't have a sense of what unfreedom looks like, right? Because we've not experienced that. So it's easy for us to be flippant and say, oh, well, we're not really free because we don't have an idea of what that lack looks like. But I think as it comes to Mandela, I think the way Mandela's kind of a scapegoat for incompetence now, right? That to mask everything that the government is not doing, everything that people are lacking, we print more banknotes and we erect another statue and, we do all of these frivolous things to kind of hide from. And so Mandela, that had a wonderful legacy, right? And I think was faced with an impossible task, right? If you are the president, the first democratic president of a country in 1994, the kind of trade-offs you have to make that I don't want to ever have to be in that position. But we don't get to have an appreciation for that because now he's just a PR project, right? And so young people are divorcing themselves from that because the PR is all very nice.
So they know and they woke. Is that still a term? Can I use that? Can you say woke, or is there another term?
Yeah, I don't think we use that one anymore.
Okay, is that old? I'm too old for that. There's something else.
Let's leave that one.
Okay, let's leave that one. So, but they're awake to the fact that you cannot just use Mandela's name now to say that.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot more about like bread and butter issues, right? So I think I think young people, because of the way we have to exist every day, right? Being young in South Africa is an extreme sport. The symbolism that Mandela brings does nothing for us, right? I think the generation that we are in right now is not a generation that cares for symbolism. It's not a generation that holds on to hope.
It wants to see proof. It wants to see proof
evidence.
that stuff is happening.
Exactly.
That
and if
someone's
you're not,
going to find me a job.
People often say that
Stavros is going to come and say, "Listen here, I've got an office for you," and
exactly.
at Aspen.
Exactly.
Look at him, he got so worried there.
No, he's stressed out. He's stressed out about what's going to happen after this. But I think we always say that youth vote with their feet, right? Young people want to see movement, and I think the idea of memory and history is really important, but not when you're using it for PR. And so that's why I think a lot of young people...
I think that's the perception that Mandela's become a PR
you don't really want to hear about Mandela.
So guys, is it time for us to start looking at modern day heroes? And the person who comes to mind for me, because I've seen it so much, people say, why don't you run for president? Is Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, gift of the givers. Everyone feels he should be president, and I know him quite well. Having spent time with him, I feel he would make an excellent president. I've even offered to run his campaign because he's an amazing man. I spent time with him. I traveled with him to Iraq as a young journalist, and he's just amazing, and he finds ways. Like somebody like him, is it time for us to look for heroes like him or find heroes among ourselves, like you say? Person, like you say, Stavros, the person who gets up every day and might just be doing those little things, even if you change one person's life that day. Is it time for us now to start looking and lauding those heroes? And even you, Stavros, you could run for president also. I'll run your campaign.
Not sure of what, but...
well, something,
So look, I think that for me, it's less about heroes these days. And more about getting the collective will of a society. So this social cohesion project that I spoke about is really important because people are feeling marginalized, they're feeling alienated. There's high degrees of despair and despondency in the country at the moment.
Yes.
And I don't think it's a case of one single hero And I love Imtiaz. I think he does fantastic work. I know him quite
And he doesn't want to be president.
And
he
doesn't.
Not now anyway.
He's a smart man.
No, he's like, no.
It's honestly not about a president, quite honestly. It's about a country taking the right decisions. And a high degree of difficult and complex decisions when you take those. And charting a different way forward and pulling people along with you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's dependent or reliant on one single individual.
But our leaders in general, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think those leaders exist because everyone says, well, the leader's got to come from a political party who has to be a politician. I don't agree with that. I think that taking the lead in your little sphere, no matter how little or large it is, in your sphere of influence, and taking the lead and doing the right thing is what really will get the country going.
Yeah.
Put very differently, Countries are not built around an individual. They're built around communities that are aligned and in sync.
Yeah.
And we need those communities. Those, for me, are the real heroes.
Yeah.
The nurse or the teacher that stood up in a small community and said, to hell with this, I'm going to turn education around in my school. Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine if that mushrooms.
Yeah.
Or, for example, okay, because you were lamenting the few opportunities of the youth. So let's look at what are those levers in real terms that are going to move the needle. So look at our localization or local procurement policy. It's been in existence since 1996. It's suspended because it was taken to court. For me, that is arguably the most important lever we have in this country to create black entrepreneurs. Now imagine if you have another, 50, 100,000 black entrepreneurs because you've been able to leverage local procurement by giving young and middle-aged people opportunities through off-takes. It's so much easier when they go to the bank. Because right now, the people you were referring to, they go to the bank and the bank says, okay, show me your collateral. Well, they don't have.
They don't have.
Okay, then show me your off-take. Well, guess what? They don't have an off-take yet. Why? Because we're importing all these products. So let's use smart and clever decisions
And
like
what
that.
we have at home.
That's what leadership is.
And I'm
me.
happy to see Pearl agreeing, because I thought you two were going to end up fighting and I'd have to jump
Never.
in there. And this dress
I'm a youth at heart. So.
Yeah, so Pearl, you're agreeing. But do you, on the question of heroes, where should we, do you agree? You agree with parts of that?
No, I agree fully. I think we have to I think the idea of hero worship is just a way for men to feel valuable in society.
For men to feel valuable.
Yeah, we don't have women heroes, right? We don't outside of
Hey,
Beyonce.
listen, people have called me a hero. I don't know about you.
Outside of Beyonce and you, we don't have any.
Listen, she's right. You don't get heroes. You only get heroines. She's quite right.
And CEOs.
And sheroes.
Cringe.
Okay, I like that. Thank you.
But I think the idea of hero worship just puts all your faith in one fallible thing, right?
And when that person has to make that.
And when it no longer exists, right? What happens, right? When the person dies, when they just do something human and they make a mistake, right? Then our whole idea that we've built on this so-called...
Like what we were just talking about, the Mandelaism now.
Exactly,
yes.
right? And
right
it falls away. And I agree. I think the thing that's going to help us is not looking at who, right? There isn't going to be a singular person. And I think we just have to look across the realm of our political spectrum to know that we're not going to find another hero, right? But it's about community. It's about rebuilding this idea of community. It's about spotlighting the way South Africans are always able to find community with each other, right?
And look what happened with the floods in Durban. Look what happened with all the other disasters we've had. How people, no matter who, they just come together, and South Africans have that.
Even on positive things, right? Like sports, right? Banyana,
no matter what.
The Springboks, no matter what it is, we find, and I think it's our passion for drinking, it's our passion for a good time. It's this idea that you can always...
There, but we will talk about that later.
It's Friday.
It's Friday.
I think the ability to find community, right? Even in this very incohesive society that we have.
Yeah.
That's the real hero of South Africa, right? Is the ability for us to find some kind of commonality in a really difficult situation and make the best of it, right? I mean, in all of our work, we've gone through we were in Diepkloof on Saturday last week with a group of young people who had to turn up at 8 o'clock. 50 of them showed up. And I was very surprised. 51 RSVPs, 50 people came.
Wow, okay.
And they were there with us until 4 o'clock.
Doing what?
Talking about elections next year, talking about what a youth manifesto could look like.
Do people still want to vote?
No. We'll get there.
Oh,
we're getting
that's
there.
That's a whole other discussion.
We're trying very hard.
We'll schedule that for another day then.
But I think it shows you that when you ask people to show up about things they care about, they do, right? And that's what heroism looks like. So I think building this idea of community.
Showing up for each other.
Yeah, and people that will, because South Africans will always show up, right? No matter what it is, we will show up.
We need to make that a hashtag, showing up for each other. And what was that term you used
show up for
earlier
SA.
about resilient? What was it?
Well, it's a resilient disappointment.
Resilient disappointment and showing up for each other. We need to make that hashtags. I'm going to set that reminder. I think I can actually record it. and we can get that done. And I like that. I like that we can make those hashtags as well. So, Stavros, I know that you are passionate about I'm staying in South Africa. There are a lot of people who want to go. Canada wants a lot of South Africans. I don't know for what reason. Canada wants us. You're passionate about staying. A lot of people who are disillusioned and disappointed want to go. You're passionate about staying. Very quickly, something about myself. In 2017, I was held at gunpoint in my house, and with my kids and my then husband. Notice I said then husband. And after that, he was like, "No, we need to start looking at leaving, and we need to, we can't stay here." And my comment was, "But where do you go?" I said, where do you go? At least here it's the devil you know. You know what you're dealing with. You can be standing on London Bridge and somebody's going to drive a van into you. You could be standing at the Louvre and a bomb is going to go off. Where on earth do you go? This is where we are. It's the devil you know. We work with that, but also this is home. I never wanted to leave. We were on different sides of that argument, and then finally, of course, came to some agreement at some point, and yes, okay, we'll stay and put the security gates back on and the beams back on and all of that. So what would you say to South Africans who are so disappointed that they want to leave? What reasons would you give them to stay?
So look, firstly, I took a bullet through the chest.
Like literally?
Literally. Okay, I've got the scars to show.
Can you show us? Okay, you can't show us. We can't have you undressed.
It's a family-friendly show.
Well,
So, a millimeter above my main artery,
wow.
and it came out through my arm here because I managed to turn.
Uh-huh.
But I had a hemopneumothorax touch and go, right? So
Oh,
I've
I don't know what that
experienced-
means. I told you my mom wanted to be a doctor. I didn't
means
make it.
your lung collapses.
Okay.
Okay, so quite a distressing, disquieting, disconcerting, all the adjectives you want to use, right? But you kind of move on from that. And as I said, I live my life on where is the need the most and where can I have the most impact. Now, not everybody's got that mindset, I accept. Particularly, it's easy for me to sit here at 58 and have that mindset, right? I'm acknowledging that up front. Very different conversation if you're 28 or 18.
Or 30, in your 30s, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Won't give ages away here, but so I have this discussion very often with medical specialists. I don't know, let's say a neurologist. So say to them, look, you want to leave. They're worried about NHI and all these other things, justifiably so, I guess. But I always say to them, listen, where are you going to have the most impact? Neurologists, there are 10,000 of you in New York, okay? 8,000 in London, whatever the numbers are, right? But there are very few of you here. And that's what you want to do, is you want to have an impact. So that's one compelling reason to stay, is to have an impact which is the most self-actualizing thing you can ever do. You can't self-actualize more than that. Because it's not about what you do for yourself. You've got to live your life reasonably selflessly.
Yeah.
Okay? And there are varying degrees of that selflessness. But if you're in a position to help others, because either you've got the talent, the skill, the expertise, whatever it is,
Yes,
right?
to save a life.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then I think that is how you best self-actualize. Okay. But there's a corollary to that, and that is that the crime, corruption is out of control in this country.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that unless we start bringing that under control, particularly for young people, it's completely counterintuitive that a young woman cannot walk down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, without being cat whistled or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
right?
Harassed.
Okay,
Yeah.
or harassed. Why should that be? And I'm not saying you don't get harassed overseas, but we know this often leads to violence and other
We're
violent
talking
crimes.
about rape and violent rape. Let's
Correct,
say
correct.
it. Yes, yes.
And
That's what's going to happen.
our
Yeah.
GBVF is unacceptably high in this country. And I'm afraid it can be addressed, I believe. If you get private and public working together, I think it can be addressed. So I'm sitting on I'm staying because of my age, because of the impact that you can have.
Yes.
But
And you are
I'm-
making an amazing impact. You are not.
But
gonna
I'm
stay
also
back.
saying that if we want to keep the young people here who are the future, it's not about guys of my age any longer, right? It's the young people. And I have these discussions with my kids all the time. You've got to keep them in the country. And the first thing they look at is, am I safe when I wake up every morning?
Absolutely.
Can I go out and enjoy my life? Because we were discussing what freedom means, right?
Yes.
So aside from economic freedom, I think what's even more constraining in this country is the security freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not alive, you're
Yeah.
not going to go and earn a living for. You know how many people do you know that are young parents? Then you leave orphans behind because someone got murdered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a wife got battered the morning she woke up.
Yeah.
Okay. And she keeps getting battered. Eventually she dies. No one does anything about
Yeah.
it, right? So I'm a great believer of all of these things. Sanitary towel campaigns.
Yes.
Okay. GBV. And GBV is not having the next conference to discuss GBV. We all know what GBV is, right?
Yeah.
It's how many safe havens have you put
Look,
up?
I'll be honest. I'm over those.
I'm not tired of
over those
people
16
saying-
days. I mean, those 16 days for me, I'm like what happens?
Should be
We need more than
365
that.
days.
Yeah, I'm over it.
But
yeah.
I'm like tired of people saying, can you please fund a conference to discuss GBV? You know what I do? Turn it down immediately. You come and say, look, we want to put up a safe haven.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are we
Where
still
women can
talking
go.
That
about?
takes 15
Yes.
women
Yes.
who have nowhere to go and they need to flee the home to save their lives.
Yes.
That's what counts for me.
And we need the posse that's going to go out there, the sheroes who are going to take them, pack their bags,
Correct.
pin that guy down, and take the kids and the wife away, or the
Correct.
other way around. Listen, men are victims too. Let's not downplay that as well.
Agreed.
So we need that, and I'm so glad, and that's such a great point. And I think when you start working on that, I'm available for the job.
No, we've done it
I'm-
already.
okay, so can I? Okay, I'm available
We've
to
done
help.
one. We've done a safe haven. But
I'm-
those
I'm
are kind
available
of,
for the next one.
Those are kind of the things that are
Because
reasons
I'm passionate
to,
about it as well.
Yeah,
I
but
really
those
am.
are reasons to stay here, right?
Yeah, those
And
are
I know
reasons to
that's
stay
not
to make
necessarily when
that
you're
difference.
18 or 22 or
Yeah.
24. That's not necessarily what appeals to you. But
Well, I
I'm
think
just
that's
saying
changing. Yeah.
we've got to create a safe environment before
Yeah.
you even look at the economy. 'Cause
Yeah.
you can say, well, I'm worrying about the economy, but you're dead the next day. It's not going to help you either,
not
right?
gonna- yeah.
You or your
Yeah.
family. So these are the things we've got to start addressing to give people hope, inspiration,
Okay.
and get shot of this despair that's currently prevalent.
Well, I'm ready to come and lay the brick and mortar for that next shelter. You call me.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
you call me. Pearl, are you finding that more young South Africans are planning a life away from South Africa, that they're planning that they want to go and settle somewhere else and that's what they're working towards? Or do you find that they're still hopeful as well, that they still think that there is no somewhere, like we said, over the rainbow? This is the rainbow. We were once, and I think people hate the term Rainbow Nation now, they can't stand it.
Yeah.
But there isn't, or are they planning to say, okay, I'm studying towards this and then I'm going to go to London, or I'm going to end up in the US, or I'm going to go to Canada where they want us very badly, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the conversation about whether to stay or leave, and even amongst young people, right, is a conversation about privilege, right? Because the ability to say, I'm going to stay, means that you have the option to leave, and most people don't.
Yeah.
Right? So for a lot of people, they don't need to find a reason to stay because they don't have the ability to go. And so I think for especially people with this whole I'm staying or I'm leaving thing, right, is check your privilege, right? Because you have the option to go. And so we're all on this ship together. The ship is not sinking, but it's in a quite a critical condition. And instead of those of us who are here fixing the ship so that we can carry on going wherever we're going together, you decide, I've got a jet ski, and you get off and you leave, right? I think it's an incredibly privileged opportunity to be able to have. But I don't blame people for wanting to take it, right? I always think about if I had to have an opportunity to move, what would be the thing that I would want to move for? And it's really just to be able to walk out on the street at night, right?
Yeah.
It's to be able to go out and experience nightlife and
Yeah.
be outside
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not have anything happen to me and people ask about what I was wearing,
Yeah.
right? Be able to wear whatever I want,
Yes.
right? I think it's those freedoms that we don't have here that push people to go. But I think
And let's be honest, there aren't many other countries where they also still have, those are still issues in other countries as well. There's some of what we've mentioned.
yeah, you're gonna experience
there's
it.
big
You're
issues
gonna
everywhere,
experience
yeah.
it in a lot of places, but there's
Yeah.
also lots of places that you go where you
Yes,
won't
yes,
experience it, right?
yes.
And it's such a jarring thing, I think, as a woman to be. I was lucky to go to Germany in July this year. And walking around the street at 4:00 in the morning and nobody cares that you're outside.
Yeah.
It was so alarming. You know, you're trying to like keep your phone and you're like all of the things you're used to doing at home. And you think, but we can do this, right? This is not an unachievable goal. I think for us, and I think when talking about young people leaving specifically, is look at countries like Canada and what the pull factor is, right? So Germany's just now introduced this opportunities visa, which is a visa that you can enter the country on without even having a job.
Yeah.
They're saying, just come here and look for a job here. And the reason is because those populations are aging. They don't have young people to push their labor force.
Yes.
We
Yes.
have a labor force that's almost entirely young. But we're not tapping into that resource, right? We're not saying, actually, we can create a
Well, look,
country.
they don't even know that.
We can
They
create a
don't even
country
ha- yeah.
where older people don't even have to work. You can create enough of a safety net
Yes.
with just having employed, skilled young people. And other countries know this. That's why it's so easy now to go to Canada, right? Because they don't have young people. And we do.
Yeah.
So you have this enormous
And
resource.
it's cold there, people. It's cold. No matter what.
Listen,
it's
we live in a
cold.
hot country.
We live in
listen,
everywhere.
I'm from Durban. The temperature drops below 24 and my puffer jacket is out, right?
Look, now you're making
I
me
can't
wait.
live in the
Germany, Greece,
snow.
Germany, Greece. I don't know where I'm going now. Germany, Greece. It's we'll have to choose.
Durban's good.
Durban's good. I like Durban.
No, I'm just
But
talking.
we were not seeing this big resource that we have,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah.
think for people that are considering going is really appealing, right? Understand that when you do that, there are a lot of us here that are stuck here, right?
So
We
go learn
can't
something
go.
and come back. How's that?
Go and
Go learn something
and
and come
I
back
think because we
and
also
apply
forget
here.
that we're not, our entire lives is not just being citizens, right? We're also humans having human experiences.
Yeah.
And wanting to say, I want to go away for a year so that I can breathe
Yes.
and come and rejuvenate myself and heal my
Great.
spirit, because South Africa breaks you. Come back, learn something, bring it back here.
bring it
I think
back.
it's a fair
That's
and
another
reasonable
hashtag.
thing.
Bring it back.
Yeah, I think it's a
that's
fair
another
and
hashtag. Bring it
reasonable
back.
thing to expect, right? But I think the default should always be, how can you make the thing? You're not going to find South Africa anywhere else. And it's the reason why everyone that moves is brutally unhappy.
Yeah, and they want to
because
come
with
back.
all our problems, this is the best place to be in, right? And I think we have an opportunity and a responsibility to figure out all of the things you like about other countries, you can have it here.
Okay, so you're still on the I'm staying. You're still partly there, but you're like, go have the experience and come back.
Yeah, look,
Okay.
my default is always going to be stay, even though I understand the reasons for going. And if you go, don't make sure the ticket is
Bring
not
it
one
back.
way.
Bring it back, we said. Stavros, I just want to make sure you probably have a holiday house in Greece. All the Greeks have a holiday house in Greece, right?
Listen, I'm South African of Cypriot origin.
I know, but you
right?
have a holiday house in Greece, right? You have like your great grandpa left the house there to you.
No.
I just
no,
want the
my-
Planning our
address.
December
my
I want the
family
address
are-
for December.
My
Pearl and
family
I
are
going.
from Cyprus, not from Greece.
Okay, but like it's a
very
short
close
hop,
by,
right?
very
Okay, it's a short hop. I don't mind the ferry ride.
Short,
It's fine.
short hop.
Okay.
But I just want to pick up on this. It's really
Yeah.
important. One should never have a qualm against anyone that wants to move abroad to
Yes.
develop themselves,
Yeah.
because there are developmental experiences you might not get in this country in a particular field. It could be in science, it could be in engineering, wherever it might be. But I do think that we've always got to default to this position, and it's easy for me to say at my age, of course. So I'm not minimizing what young people are going through, the challenges, is where can I have that best impact? And maybe that's a hashtag.
Yeah.
Where can I have the best
Yes.
impact, right?
We-
And that's how you've got to look, because we've also got, you're right, we're humans first and foremost, and then we're citizens, okay? But we do have some responsibility in our lifetime to try and make this country work for future generations.
Yes.
Okay.
So
That's what
inspiring.
we've got to do.
Love those words.
And
Yeah.
for me, that's some attraction, right? But we shouldn't also forget the number of people that come and live in South Africa because they enjoy the climate,
Yes.
they enjoy the
Cheaper from all the euros they've saved over the years.
absolutely. I was going to
Okay.
exactly come onto that, because
Yeah.
you try as a young person living in London at the moment, right?
Yeah.
When the mortgages are going through the roof
And the space
and they're
is like this
repossessing
small,
houses.
it's like a shoebox,
A
yeah.
can of Coke is 200 Rand
Right.
in
Yeah.
London.
And they call they call it the cold syndrome, right? Where people get no vitamin D for like 6 months. a day.
paying?
Exactly.
And sad.
Sorry, Londoners who are listening, but yeah, that's why.
So anyway, look, there are pros and cons in everything in life, and I know you individualize these decisions, and many people don't have the means to leave in the first place. But I think if you are going to leave, keep in mind that you do this developmentally, you come back and you have an impact.
bring something back.
You have double the impact.
Stavros and Pearl, inspirational conversations we've had today. In 30 seconds, I want to know from you, what is your message to South Africans this Heritage Month, young and old? Is old okay, or should I say more mature? Old, young and more mature.
I think my message to South Africans would be to rediscover what community means to all of us, and to act in a way that prioritizes that idea, that we are all in this together, we're on this ship together regardless of where it goes, and to find ways to collaborate with each other, to support each other, to reach across the board to somebody who may not have anything in common with, but you're all here on this plot of land together. And to figure out what communities we want to build for the future, right? What does South Africa look like 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And what is it that we can do to get there together?
Yeah. Stavros?
Let's use this year's Heritage Month, which again is in the midst of the World Cup, and we know the power of sport to unify a nation.
Camaraderie that comes with it, yes.
Power of sport to unify a nation. Let's use this Heritage Month to rediscover our diversity in strength. We've always said diversity is the strength of the country. Let's be action orientated towards that. Let's embrace our diversity, and let's start liking each other. We've drifted apart from each other. We are socially intolerable. Let's find each other. And my closing remark is, let's restore the social cohesion project of this country. If we do that, you'll find that a lot of problems start disappearing when that happens.
Thank you, guys. It's been amazing, and it's been great to hear the views from both of you. You working with the youth, and Stavros being
Working with the geriatrics. Yeah.
working with the more mature, and we can see that olive oil
intergenerational
definitely works. So olive oil works for the Greek. Or Cypriot, sorry, so I know it's very, I can't get that wrong. And when am I getting your award? When am I going to accept it? 1st of November, please remind me. 1st of November, I'm going to go. Okay, thank you very much. Guys, it's been amazing. Happy Heritage Month.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much.